you get to the point where your material are creating with you.
Yeah.
It's like you're just kind of letting them tell you where they want to go. So when you can make yourself do that with creating little worlds or Zen garden, that pure creativity. I love that.
Hello, all my free-spirited and eager creatives out there. Thank you for joining me on the Sage Arts Podcast. This is Sage, and we are here for the first episode of 2024. I'm really excited to get back to regular schedule, spending time with you every week after the end of last year being a little wonky, to say the least. So this will be great. The fates, however, have already been trying to mess with my schedule. My mother-in-law ended up in the hospital this week. She's okay. It's a broken hip thing. She had a very successful surgery, so she's got a few months of recovery to look forward to. But my father-in-law, love him, but he's not good being on his own. So Brett, myself, and Brett's brother have been taking care of the both of them for the last, 5 or 6 days, while literally all the rest of the family was out of town. So hopefully now they're all back and it'll calm down and the assistance will be spread out a little bit more. But I guess that just goes to show that there's no guarantee that there won't be odd weeks coming up. I mean, I have a grandbaby on the way. There's a family reunion. I have my regular trips to Colorado to check in on family and my old house that is home to some dear friends of mine. There's people in Maui I got to go check in on, so not to mention the art and the books to finish, right? So there's stuff, but we're getting on this ride and we'll work it out as it comes. But in any case, I was thinking, okay, how do you start out the new year as we head into my second full year of podcasting? And I came up with I don't know if it's a kind of weird idea, but I'm weird, so I just thought it would be great to have some kind of first episode of the year tradition. And since last year, the first interview I did was with my dear friend, Christi Friesen, and we had so much fun. And she is one of the people, along with Brett, that inspired the format and the kind of content I wanted for this podcast. So I thought, what if I just bring her on again? I don't think anybody'd be bored by hearing from her again. She's just such a great guest. So I talked to Christi and she was game. So we are going to have Christi Friesen on with us in just a minute. It's going to be a little bit different since I interviewed her last year. I thought I would just let you all in on one of our kind of typical conversations. So we picked a topic and we are just going to blather about it. And it gets into some really interesting possibilities for you, some fun new possible projects that we're going to give you ideas for, and just contemplation about where we are in this crazy, heavily connected, super busy world of ours and how we take care of ourselves. Now, normally at this point, I do a little bit of business stuff, but I don't really have a lot of business. So I do have one shout out I'd like to give to Dave and Kate Goff, who they're not visual artists, they're primarily musicians and writers. And Dave is my web guy. So, but apparently they are regular listeners of the podcast and are getting a lot out of it. I just want to thank you so much for chatting with me. It was really enlightening to hear your take on the episodes. I love to hear from any one of you listeners. Anything that you have to tell me, any ideas, especially stories about things that you've been through that are similar to the kinds of subject matter that we're talking about, or just whatever, because I just love hearing from you. Any kind of communication is welcome, good, bad, or otherwise. And you can reach out to me by going to the sagearts.com website. Just click on the contact page or reach out on Instagram or Facebook through the direct messaging or comment on posts on the Sage Arts podcast pages there. There's also buttons on the website on the homepage for donations if you want to give back and support this little endeavor. There's Buy Me a Coffee or PayPal donations. That's a little ways down the homepage at the sagearts.com website. There's also a button on that homepage to sign up for the newsletter if you want to get regular notices of what's coming out and any of the little extras I put out or exercises or images or anything I do for the particular episodes that need that kind of support. And the only place really to download them will be through the newsletter because it's the only kind of easy format for me to give you access to it. But I'll also post images on Instagram when possible. They're just not downloadable. So all of these items are linked in the show notes or description sections of the pages from which you are listening to this podcast. So you can go there as well. Business aside, let's get on to our fun and info-packed conversation today. The subject matter is focused on tending to ourselves as well as our creativity, which is, I think, a really great way to start out the year. And Christi and I thought you'd like to eavesdrop in on our thoughts on the matter because of something that both of us did simultaneously, separately, like hadn't talked to each other, because apparently we are both trying to find ways to recapture our creative childlike spirit and also tend to ourselves as creatives. So if you want to have questions in mind as you listen to our discussion, I think it comes down to asking whether you have ready access to your child side, and do you do creative work for yourself, like to amuse yourself, or do you find you are primarily motivated and maybe get lost in your obligations to others, or a sense of being service to other people, or the betterment of the world in general? As you'll hear, it's not that these are exclusive actions, but sometimes in the balance between taking care of ourselves and taking care of others, attending to our needs in order to better attend to others, really, it kind of gets out of whack. So maybe just consider where you are on that spectrum of having a good balance of those kinds of things in your life. Okay, let's go talk to Christi. And as I alluded to, this is going to be kind of a co-host situation, kind of like what I do with Brett. So you get to hear us do our thing, which is a lot of talking. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Christi or didn't hear the first episode of 2023, let's have the lady herself tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does. Welcome back, Christi. Say hi to the peoples.
Well, hi. First of all, it's very nice to be called a lady. I don't get that too often, so I'll take it. That sounds
all
terrific.
Right.
But yeah, I love being over here with you and chit-chatting. We have always so many clever, interesting things to say.
Yeah.
My name's Christi Friesen, obviously, and I am an artist, a weirdo, chocolate and other exotic flavor fan, and just all-around groovy girl. So, or according to Sage, a lady. So that's always good to know.
Today.
But yeah, I primarily consider myself artistic. And yeah, and so that means I not only make, but I like to share that making process with everybody else. So that's been my life for the last several decades. I can't think of anything else. Oh, I live in Maui.
Oh, yeah, you live in Maui. And I am in a turtleneck with a sweater and a jacket on, and she is in a little tank top, like barely little strappy thing. She's just all like, what?
And I turned off my air conditioning. So just so you know, that's what I'm dealing with over here.
Is that cold, huh?
But you know, I love being here as a creative. My brother lives here. I moved here about 4 years ago. My studio it's a little room. So my studio sounds really grand, but it's actually my bedroom that I roll out of bed and directly into my computer or workstation. But it's got a big window that looks right out at Mount Haleakala, which is just, gorgeous. I look through my little orchid and then out onto the mountain. And then on the other side of our little condo here, the ocean. So it's a beautiful place to be a creative person.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just fantastic. Everything about my life now is all creativity. I talk to people online. I do courses that I create. I have memberships, all that kind of stuff. It's just a beautiful life. I like it.
Yeah, I go to visit her in Hawaii. And it's like, we go and check out stuff, but it always seems to be based around like creativity and making things and the cool things that we find that we can use to make things with. And then going and getting the coffee to help us keep up so we can make all the things. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
So,
yes, exactly.
You'll actually kind of get to, I think, hear us in our native format.
Yes, our natural setting, right?
Because instead of it being a straight up interview this time, I'm trying a little co-hosting with Christi and maybe some other people this year I'll be doing that with as well. Because I have so much fun with it with Brett. Because there's back and forth. I love it. I do a lot of the talking. So I thought I'd see what happened if I brought Christi on, because Christi usually does most of the talking. Just teasing.
Yeah, I'm good at that. You've noticed that. But I love the co-host idea that I can not feel like I'm having to answer questions, but that you and I are having a conversation that other people are vicariously listening in and feeling like they're there with us. I think most interview situations, the good ones are like that anyway. But I feel like this is nice to kind of jump into that space right off the bat.
But you can feel free to ask me questions, and I'll relay some of my stories, and you'll relay some of your stories. And
I like that.
So since we haven't chatted, at least where people can hear us, for a year, why don't we talk about the past year? How was your 2023, creatively speaking?
Right. That is a wonderful place to start. I feel like for me, 2023 has been really interesting. I'm here in Hawaii. What could go wrong with that? So let's just say that. I haven't had to deal with any of those things that so often happen in life that really can make it a challenge. So it's just been kind of exploring what the hell I want to be when I grow up.
Right.
Which is an interesting thing to do, right? And I've come to the conclusion that what I want to be when I grow up is a kid.
Yeah, right?
Because
There
I
you
think
go.
we had it right when we were kids.
We were
right?
kids, and we
You
didn't
jumped
know.
around in the mud and you caught bugs and you ran around and other people had food ready for you when you got in the house, which I love that.
Ideal.
So I think my 2023 has been sort of exploring this whole weird thing. And you and I have talked about this so often, this weird relationship when you're a creative kid who is creative also as a livelihood. So it's like your personal life and your private life and your business life are all intermingled and they're just all meshed together. That's a weird space to be.
Yeah.
So I think we both are sort of exploring that this past year.
Yeah, because there's a whole balance thing that we're constantly trying to work out. 'Cause it's like you never find a perfect balance because stuff just keeps getting thrown into the mix.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. So for me this last year, I had a couple weird situations. But I mean, I did the podcast. I was still trying to write. I was getting back into painting. And then all this stuff happened on the house. And then Brett got so busy at work that I had to do all the things.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
right.
that was difficult. And then it was just a weird thing, too, because either I was doing the podcast and trying to grow it and grow the audience and maybe trying to monetize it. And I had to choose something. So I chose not to work on the things that would monetize the podcast, which is weird. But I had to let go of the idea after being a business person since my first business was in 1999 to not try to make money at what I was doing. So
that is weird.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was very strange. It changes the whole life work balance thing. And then also rediscovering things about yourself as you go through this process. Like one of the things that I kind of knew but didn't quite see how clearly it was a thing for me was I have a really hard time switching gears. So if I'm doing one thing, even during the week, the whole of the week, I kind of just want to be in the same mode. You know, so when all the stuff in the house started happening and why I was very irregular about the podcast the last couple months was because it was very hard for me to go from all the house fixing, plant researching, and whatever stuff I was doing to sit down and write and do the podcast and things like that. So I'm like, I want to forgive myself for not being that perfect person who could do everything in the same day.
Boy, that's a mouthful right there. I love that you said that because I think so many of us are unpacking this concept of just what is expected of us.
Right.
And especially if you are entrepreneurial in the arts, I think even more particularly, the expectations we have on ourselves are just nuts.
Yeah.
Because we're expected to simultaneously be completely and without any holdbacks creative.
Yeah.
At the same time as running the business. And there are two different brain functions on the best of days if your brain is functioning. So to try and continue to be going back and forth and doing them, that gets harder and harder. And I think as we get older, maybe it gets even a little bit more challenging just because of the demands of, you know, you have less energy or you have less brain space or whatever it may be.
Life
maybe
gets more
less
complicated.
Power. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The kids leave the house, but I don't know. I think my kids need more things from me now than they, since, I don't know, maybe since they were tiny, you know? So it's, things just get complicated and that's constantly happening. So our work-life balance thing is an ever-changing thing that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, I know that's been on my brain. You know, whenever you and I talk about this, we are both having that on our brain constantly about how do we disassociate the need for a monetary conclusion to validate the creative process at the same time of being people who need to do at least some aspect, maybe me more so than you at this point, of making a living at it.
Right.
It's just a weird thing, right?
Yes.
Like my brain and my heart rebel at the idea of any of it needing to make any money.
Right.
But apparently my credit card companies feel like I should be paying them on a regular basis. I don't even know what that's about. I've tried to tell them I'm an artist, but they don't seem to take that as a thing. So whatever.
This part of the conversation kind of dovetails into the subject matter that we're kind of get to today too. So 2023 was about the work-life balance thing. And maybe that's why the two of us ended up doing kind of the same thing or working on the same ideas the end of this year. So
do more often than not, which freaks me out some days.
Right?
It's like you'll tell me what you're doing and I'll be like, that's what I was also doing. It's very cool.
But we're doing it in very different sizes though this time. So
but still, philosophically, we're often on the same kind of wave pattern.
Don't know. And it might be that the whole world is on a certain wave pattern.
Yeah.
Because you notice like people come up with like some of the same ideas and artwork all at the same time, but independently. Yeah. So in any case, I was working on the backyard over here at the Barron homestead. And in one area, I decided we shouldn't have anything for various reasons. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to do some kind of like rock garden thing. And then I thought it'd be nice if you didn't have to like put it together and then just have it that way for the next 20 years. Well, I'm like, what can we do to make it changeable? And then I started thinking about kind of like Zen gardens, but not Zen gardens. Right. I love the natural art that people do where they make arrangements of rocks or leaves or twigs or whatever. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have an area where I could just put rocks and bits and bobs and doodads and little vessels and anything that might work together that can be arranged or rearranged either by us or people that are visiting us. So kind of like a rock garden, Zen garden, playground.
I remember you telling me that. And I just thought, what a great idea. I love that idea.
But then you told me about a thing that you're doing. I'm like, you're basically doing the same thing on a very small scale. So tell the listeners what it is that you came up with.
Isn't that so wild? Again, like I'm always mind blown when we do these sorts of things in the same genre, so to speak. I have a small back lanai, so it's like basically a balcony. And so I've made as much little garden as I can out there, but I thought, I want these little worlds too, like you were talking about. So I got a bunch of these little dishes, just little condiment, like Japanese condiment dishes. And I just started making little worlds out of them. There's one that I've got like some black sand in it. And then I had this little castle that I had built as a project or something. And I had broken it off of its thing. So there was just a castle lying around. I thought, well, what if I just stick this in the sand? I put a couple of crystals in here. Hey, that's cool. And then same thing, I had another little dish. I put some moss in it, some little bits of bird feathers that have floated down from my lanai, and added some nifty little metal orb that I had collected somewhere along the way. And I just thought, this is really fun to create a little dish that you can constantly use it to showcase either some treasures that you have or turn it into just like a little world for a while until, like you said, get sick of it and we make a different one. I don't know why that is so fun and satisfying, but we were telling each other, so like, me too, only mine are tiny and on my desk.
Yeah. And the thing that struck me is that we were both working on something that didn't have a marketed end game. We weren't doing this to build something. I mean, I think you have some ideas of sharing this idea with other people that will be marketed. Right. But the whole idea of doing a piece of artwork that is temporal and isn't going to be sold, and that's wholly yours. So when you're doing something like that, you don't really have to take in all the usual considerations of, is this saleable? Which market is this going to be for? How is the construction? So it's durable in whatever format or form it's going to be used or hung or, shown.
Right.
And I think because it's temporal, you don't have to think about all the outside influence stuff that we do. Like, what will people think of this? How will they see this? Because it's really just for you. You do it for yourself, and you are doing it in that moment, and it's only for that moment. So it's a very temperable, changeable art that I think is a little less risky for a lot of us to not feel that how this is going to be judged or whether it's going to be successful in our market if we're a selling artist. So I think it just takes away a lot of the pressure and the stress that we have while we're working that may keep us from getting into flow or keep us from enjoying it as much. And now then the question is, why is this useful or important, and why are we drawn to it?
Yeah. I think it goes back, like you and I were talking about, like being a kid again.
Yeah.
That's what you did when you were kids. You build things out of your blocks and you make little tracks and you set up these things. And like for me, I don't know about you when you were a kid, but I spent so much more of my time getting everything ready to play. You had to make sure you had the rocket base was squared away in the area where the astronauts came, and then this is the dressing rooms in case they had to go to a party later. You had to set up the whole thing. So actually playing with your astronaut toys, not as exciting. Setting up the whole base, much more exciting. So that's very part of being a child, of that just pure imagination. Nobody is responsible at the end of the day. You go inside for dinner and hopefully you pick up your toys afterwards. I mean, like there's nothing that you gained except for the experience. Maybe that's what we're looking for, is that experience more than anything else.
Exactly. And I think that's the value, is that we as artists, especially if you're a working artist, are constantly, no matter how hard you try, somewhere in the back of your mind, there is, what is this for? How can I make money on it? Or, who am I going to sell it to? Or are people going to like it? Like, even if you're not a selling artist, but you do post things, the influence of what are they going to think on Instagram if I post this? Who's going to like this? How many likes am I going to get? Whatever, those kinds of things, I think for most of us, eke in while we're doing stuff. And so
Yes.
something like this, it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, you could take a picture of what you did and post it so people might think of that, but if you just have something that you can just play around with without any end game, without any particular outcome other than I am in this moment. And when you think about that, that's the essence of mindfulness and like mindfulness meditation is trying to get you in the moment. And if you meditate, the most common thing is to be focused on your breath. So you're just focusing on one thing so that you can calm everything down and then just get your brain on kind of one track. And for me, working on this kind of thing, my thing in my backyard is not made yet, but we're in the process of making it. But I've done that kind of thing just like with polymer clay. It's very easy just to get all your scraps together and just muddle around as a precursor to working on more serious pieces, because I don't have any expectations out of the stuff I'm mucking around with beforehand. But it gets my brain in that mode and I get into flow and I get kind of lost. And there's no real risk other than nothing comes out of it. Sometimes something does come out of it and I end up making a usable piece out of it, which is kind of fun. But I don't have that expectation.
Yeah, that's not your goal.
Yeah, so I can be focused on one thing. Like instead of the breath, it's the malleability of the polymer and just molding it. And that's all I'm focused on. And you get into flow. And it's really good for stress. And it's really good for anxiety levels and your brain health and all this stuff.
I mean, that absolutely my preferred form of meditation is being in flow state when you're art. I mean, I can sit and do the normal traditional meditation, but quite frankly, I get bored of it. But when I'm in a flow state, I feel like I'm in the same brain thing. I am completely in the moment. You get to the point where your material are creating with you. Yeah. Even if it's something simple like making a little world, it's like you're just kind of letting them tell you where they want to go, which is an amazing thing as a creative that people who don't tap into that creative part of them don't really know what that means. But anybody listening who is creative and has been in that moment where you are almost like disconnected from the thought process of making and you are just flowing in it. I mean, that's a beautiful place. And it's playtime. It's fun. It's just everything you want your life to be for those moments, So, So when you can make yourself do that with creating little worlds or Zen gardens or, there's so many ways you can get to that state, but it's that pure creativity. I love that.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how, and it doesn't matter what material is. In fact, it doesn't matter what creative form it is. People will say something about the material took over. The wood told me what to carve. My characters in my stories ran off and did their own thing. And, we always see another entity in our process.
Yes, exactly. Like you're stepping back and observing it happening, which is like you become the observer of it, which is really an interesting thought.
But it's not the inanimate material or the words or whatever they're doing. It's part of your brain that you don't usually have access to. That's off doing its own thing. It's back there, though. That subconscious or that next layer down that is working in the background all the time. And you don't know it. So when you're working with these materials and all of a sudden it seems like they're doing their own thing, that's really that other part of your mind. And it is doing
they say
it.
Everything is energy, right? Everything is vibration and energy and frequencies. And if you buy into that idea that everything is energy, which, physics seem to imply that may be so in this way.
Yeah, there's some
matching your energy to sort of the creative vibe of the universe, you're just kind of in the same frequency as all things that are made. And then you are just flowing in that space for as long as you're matching your energy with that. And then just things happen and it's interesting and it's fun. And as long as you are in that brain energy space, then things just create themselves with you. And that's very cool. And like you said, it could be anything. It could be dancing or singing or baking or gardening or any of these things where we're making something happen.
Yeah.
Like,
and
my favorite.
Right? And I really believe everybody needs to do that in some form. I just think as human beings, I think it's really essential. And I think the things that we're talking about in terms of these temporal pieces of art really point out the advantages of basically art therapy, you can say. But it is therapeutic, whether you're doing art as a business and, something that you do to pay the bills.
Right.
But when you're in that flow state, when you're in that mode, you really do let go of the worries and concerns, and you are really in the moment, which is what pretty much every meditative type of thing I've ever looked into. That's what you're focused on, like trying to just be in the moment. And art can get you there and very easily. And you're right. I meditate as well, but it's just so hard because there's 100,000 things I have to do and they're like hanging over my head back here, waiting for me to be done with my meditation. But in art, No, in art or writing or any of my creative modes, I get in it and I'm gone. I don't know what's going on with the rest of the world.
Yeah. That's a strange way of altering. Like so many people have to go towards chemicals and other kinds of experience that will help alter their mind. And I'm not knocking that one way or the other. I think there's a place for all those things. But when you're creative, you have access to that mind-altering state whenever you want. Right. I don't think people really realize how interesting that can be. And a lot of it has to do with letting yourself play and not like you said, thinking about what the end result is, what is this for, what is this supposed to be? I mean, if you drop all of that and you just mess about, you get to these altered states rather easily, I think, as a creative. But I love the little worlds thing because it is actually like traveling you to a different place that's very tangible. It's like, I am making this little thing, or I'm putting these little guys here, I'm making a pond, or I'm creating a, whatever. Is like you're actively creating a different universe for yourself to play in for a few minutes.
I so love the idea. Obviously, we're both working on it. But I think for a lot of people who have a harder time getting into flow, because it's not always easy for everybody. Some of us it takes time to get the rest of our life kind of like, out of our way.
Right.
But the less stress you have, the less of external influence that you have, the less fear associated with what you're doing, the easier it is to get into it. Because flow state is accomplished with a challenging activity that is not so challenging as to be frustrating. But that makes you feel accomplished as you do it, right? If you can work on something like you can make a little world out of nothing, out of these few little things and just get into it, and there's no real risk, there's no real worries, you can get lost in it. I think for some people who have a harder time to get into flow, this may actually give them an opportunity to do that. So there's really a real low stress aspect to doing temporal art. And it doesn't have to be like what Christi and I are talking about with our little dishes or our big rock bed. It could be in anything. It could be arranging leaves on the ground.
Yeah.
I do have to insert, because I'm such a tree hugger, that if you are in a national forest or any kind of protected area, don't move anything around. Because you are potentially ruining a small ecosystem. Like when people are building cairns in national parks and stuff, they're literally destroying very fragile ecosystems for very small animals and microorganisms and all that kind of stuff. So in any of those protected places, just be careful about doing this kind of thing. But in your backyard, with the stuff you're going to take and throw in the trash anyways.
Then that's
your rocks, your twigs, whatever. Go out there and you can just, move things around and make patterns and decorations or make faces, whatever speaks to you. Maybe you do that with your yogurt in the morning, like do little designs with your fruit in it. Whatever.
I mean, that actually could be so much fun. And you could decide, I'm going to just share my fruit story every morning.
And you think about that. That's the kind of thing a child would do. That's the kind of thing I did. I just kind of arrange my food. I want to see things
playing with it. Yeah. I mean, you watch kids. Like I go down to the ocean almost every evening. My brother and I will go down about an hour before sunset, and we've got a favorite little beach. And we just get out in the wave and we watch the sunset from the ocean. But one of the fun things besides watching the sunset is watching all the people on the shore. Because you've got all the kids running around. I love watching them make sandcastles because it does not matter how old that kid is, including the teenagers and the young adults and the parents. Once you start playing in the sand and you just decide, I'm making something here, that's it. They're done. They are making sandcastle now until they suddenly come back into their reality and go, oh, shoot, I'm a grown person and I'm covered with sand. But, until they remember that, they are back to being a 5-year-old again, and they're just digging and creating towers and making little holes. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah. Fantastic classical example of temporal art.
Yes.
Because anybody who's ever gone to beach has probably done this. And know it's not going to last. You're going to be lucky if you get to finish it before the waves come and take it away.
Yeah.
And yet everybody goes to the beach and does this. Why?
Yep.
We're not going to get anything out of it. We can't sell it. Most of us are not going to take pictures of it. Well, the kids aren't going to take pictures of it.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun. And that's the kind of thing I think maybe we need to do more of. Just get lost in something that doesn't have any value outside of the process of that moment.
Yeah. We've lived in this and we're not going to get into a discussion about capitalism, but we live in a society where everything is geared on you being productive and you creating something that has value, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's good or bad. All I'm saying is it's a tremendous amount of pressure for everything that you do to always have either a price tag or a judgment call on it.
Judgment calls,
if we can make ourselves have a regular habit of doing something every day that makes no sense, that is temporary, and is just to amuse ourselves, I think that would be a really great meditation, a really great practice, a really great thing to help ourselves feel really good about just being us and just enjoying life.
I absolutely believe that. And I think there are more demands on us now, not in any real concrete way, but we have all these subtle demands from societal demands, like being on social media. And I apologize to all of you who are tired of me going on about how social media is a problem, but it is wonderful. It is such a fantastic way to keep in contact with people, to see what other people are doing, to really get to understand other people's worlds. And I love that. But I really have such a hard time with the fact that because we see so much of what other people are doing, we feel like we have to keep up. And we feel like these people are popular and these people are getting attention and these people are selling their work and we have to be like them. And we have to figure out what that secret is. So we have a lot of more subtle expectations that we put on ourselves because we're comparative creatures. We're competitive in some fashion. I don't think of myself as competitive, but we do compare.
And it's also a social paradigm, wouldn't you say, that like in order not to be ostracized, which is built deep into our lizard brain, we have got to fit in. So if they're all doing that and I'm not, that means I'm going to be left behind and starve to death out in the wilderness. So, you know, you have that sort of a biological imperative to kind of keep up with what you think everyone else is doing.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is something that's built into us from, I don't know, tens of thousands of years of being social creatures. Because social media is so far reaching, we have gone from being concerned about our social status within our local community or our family, rather small group of people. And you can be the great artist, the person that's admired for your art within a small group and feel good about it. But then you go online and you feel like, well, look, all these people doing this crazy, wonderful stuff. I can't do that. And you shouldn't do that, first of all. So just, get out of your minds that what people are doing online is something that you should be doing or that you should be doing as well as them or whatever. Because honestly, I don't even know what the percentage is. Maybe I should research this at some point. How much of the stuff that you see online is actually doctored? Like the artwork is doctored. It is fixed. I've actually watched some art process videos or TikToks or whatever, and they cut between things.
Right.
I could see what they did, and they took shortcuts that they're not showing, and they're making people feel like they can't do that kind of work, but these people are, so why, they should be able to. And a lot of it's fake to some extent. So we end up with all this pressure to do something that isn't even real.
Yeah.
So yes, I love this idea of going back and just practicing like kind of how to be a child again.
Yes.
Because all these temporal things, children never made, I guess nobody I knew, no child I knew, including myself, made things to sell them, And I actually, as a child, had opportunities to sell what I did. I had an opportunity to publish. I had an opportunity to sell my artwork, my crazy child artwork. But I didn't want to because I just wanted to do it. And then I didn't want someone to take it away from me. So I thought they would steal it and take it away. Because one thing did actually go off for a year and tour with some art show or whatever. And I thought they stole my stuffed bunny that I made.
Aww,
and I was so sad. But as a child, you make it for yourself.
Yeah.
You do it for yourself. You amuse yourself, like you said. And I don't think we amuse ourselves specifically.
Yeah. Like, what are we doing? Like, you and I talk about this all the time. It's like, what are you doing to amuse yourself? We both have all of these stacks of things we need to do and need to get done as the limit. But it's like, what are we doing just for us? And a lot of time, your answer to me and my answer to you be like, well, I have these things that I want to do, but I haven't got to those yet. We should be on the forefront of knowing that we have to make time to just amuse ourselves.
Yes.
But sometimes we don't. That's my goal for 2024. I want to try and amuse myself as much as possible, share the amusement because I enjoy sharing the amusement. And then hopefully somehow that will magically pay my bills. But I want to amuse myself more and just follow the joy. That's going to be kind of my catchword for this year is just like, well, I have a lot of them, but joy is one of them. Just follow the joy, just have fun, be in the moment, all those things we know. But the joy part, I really want to just do joy. I have this picture in my head, and it's probably from Greek mythology, Persephone or somebody is walking on the dirt, every footprint that is left behind, the flowers are growing in each one of those footprints. Like, that's what I want my year to be, is that every footprint is just a profusion of flowers is coming out of every step. Yeah. So that's my mental thought.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. And I wanted to kind of half a step back. The amuse yourself thing, I think that should be defined, because you can be amused by things like TV or video games or whatever. But I think that's different than the creativity amuse yourself. You can be passively amused by things that are fed to you. Yeah. But then there's the amuse yourself by things that you do. And it's a very different feeling.
Yes.
Like if you made a sandcastle, even if a wave comes up and washes it away, there's a sense of accomplishment that you get out of that because you made it. Yeah. Whereas if you watch someone make a really cool sandcastle, it might be fun to watch them, but you don't get any of those feelings of accomplishment that you do when you do it yourself. So if you're going to amuse yourself, I think you get the most benefits out of amusing yourself by creating something. And it could be amusing yourself very temporally, where you don't have all those pressures and thoughts that you would have when you're trying to make something to sustain your business or to get a wider audience or whatever it is that you do with your artwork.
I like that. That's a great clarification.
Yeah, because I know a lot of specific listeners that I've talked to only do the artwork for themselves, which is fantastic, and a lot of us don't have that kind of, freedom to just be like, I'm just going to do this because I want to do this and it's just for fun, which is fantastic. And I love that you guys get to do that. And then there's those of us who are like, oh, we're trying to make a living. Or we personally need more out of it. And that's something else I kind of discovered about myself this year is like, because I wasn't monetizing the podcast. So anything that I was doing, I was like, okay, don't think about monetizing because that takes a whole layer of work off your plate. Right. And I realized that I have a hard time doing stuff if I don't have an end game. And since I've had my own business of some sort for over 20 years, that it's hard for me not to go into that mode. So I was like, I have my sister-in-law is an actor, and she put on a one-woman play this past month. And a lot of it was about people trying to crush her light. Right. And afterwards, some of the audience was commenting, and one of the woman who was filming it for her was like saying that she finally understood from what she was showing in this play that she herself never did things for herself. She was always doing things for other people, and that her creativity and stuff was always done in the service of other people. And that's very true for me. And her next comment was like, I need to be doing things just for myself where it doesn't have to do with other people. Because it was one of the things that came up in this play. Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, it made me cry. I was like, that's me.
Interesting.
Whereas a lot of people are like, I'm just gonna make art because I love doing it. And it doesn't have to be for anybody else. And maybe I'll sell it and that'll be great. And I'll be able to buy more art materials because I'll sell it. But I don't generally do anything without feeling like it has to be in service of other people. And it may be partly because of the way I was brought up. But if you're doing something like these little dishes or the little, the rock gardens that I'm going to do, you aren't doing it for anybody else. You're only doing it for yourself. And if you have a hard time doing things to just bring yourself joy, and maybe, I wonder if that's part of our society, or maybe it's a more American thing too, where we feel like we need to be doing something with an end result, with some kind of magnanimous, sense of what we're doing is going to improve the world or improve life for other people. And maybe sometimes we need to just take care of ourselves, and we don't do it enough. And so temporal work would do that. It's just me playing, and it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. And in this past week over Christmas, Brett and I went to the mountains and got a little cabin. And we made a deal that we wouldn't be online and we wouldn't do anything except for art, reading, and writing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And play games. And we played games.
And play games,
So we amused ourselves, by ourselves, just the two of us and our dog. And in this little town that had nothing else going on. So it wasn't like we could go out and entertain ourselves by skiing or kayaking or whatever. And that's what we did. Everything that we did, there was no one else to be considered. Yeah. And it was enlightening because it was hard. It was actually kind of hard.
Wow.
but maybe this is a thing. I don't know if other people are bumping up against something they don't know what it is about being able to let go with their artwork. Maybe that could be part of it. For me, I think it's part of it. And maybe doing more temporal work will show me the benefits. I don't know. That's kind of been in the back of my mind as I was typing up the notes for this.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. And I can really appreciate what you're saying. And I think part of the problem is we have an odd relationship in our culture with what we perceive to be selfishness. And something I've been kind of changing my viewpoint on quite substantially lately is that when you do things for yourself, to amuse yourself, to be true to yourself, to find your actual core and get into harmony with yourself, that the ripples of you being honest to yourself affect everybody.
Yeah.
So the motivation that we have to go take care of other people will also be accomplished almost more authentically by taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
But there's been such a stigma on doing things for yourself. So there's nothing wrong with thinking of other people. But if you took it the other way around and you just had fun and you had joy and your joy was infectious and other people felt free to follow their joy because you were following your joy and you weren't taking away from anybody, but you were letting them be also free by example, the same thing gets accomplished, but it's you flooding outwards instead of you trying to catch up and do for everybody else. So it's like a change of perspective that you have to kind of get into alignment with in order to really understand that taking care of amusing yourself is actually benefiting everybody.
True.
It's not a selfish act, but we are so caught up in this. Everything has to have another purpose, kind of like a little tag that goes on it that says what the value of it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If the value is not enough, then we shouldn't do that thing. It's a weird thing to change our thinking about that. I'm working on it. I'm still working.
That's funny that you say that. As you're saying that, I'm like, Brett and I played games like every night when we were out there. And we do that at home too. But I don't know, my value tag on that is that that's going to help our relationship.
Right.
Not like, let's just do it for fun and it amuses us both.
Right. Right.
Why do I do that?
It has to have another purpose besides. It can't just have the one thing.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't just go have fun just for the sake of having fun. Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. But that's not anything wrong with you. This is insidious. It is pervasive in our entire culture. And that many people, I think, are talking about this, but pulling out of that mindset. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing. Know the difference between being rude and unthoughtful and being self-aware and self-centered in the way that allows other people to just enjoy you being yourself. Because if everybody was themselves perfectly, everything would just be fine. In that sense, if you could be yourself authentically, that almost everything else would sort itself out. But because we can't, so we have all these other things that we have to do instead, and it gets so complicated. But everything gets caught up in that, including being able to have fun and being creative, because they seem selfish and they're not.
We've kind of learned not to take care of ourselves first. And it's funny because it reminds me of this thing I always tell the kids when they're, trying to take care of their own kids or whatever they're doing. And they're worrying about, I've got to do this for that person. I say, okay, when you're on a plane and they say, if the masks drop down, put your mask on first before helping others. That's what we're talking about. You got to take care of yourself before you help other people. Now, I say this all the time.
But it's hard to do it.
I don't know that I do this very often or as often as I should, really. So maybe that's going to be our theme for the year is taking care of ourselves and, the joy. Yep.
Let the joy ripple out and everybody will still get your joy, but it starts with you. It's not your joy you're giving to other people. It's the joy you give to you and let it do its thing by itself, without you having to feel like you got to micromanage it. I had an interesting experience that has nothing to do with anything, but for some reason I thought
Let's hear it.
Just draw the analogies of whatever they may be. But I went down to the beach yesterday morning. Early, it was like 7 in the morning. I just felt like I wanted to go walk on the beach. So as I was crossing the street, just before I was about to cross the street, a guy was jogging across the street from me. Like I'm walking out of my driveway to go across the street and he's going on the sidewalk, down the way. And he's jogging with a big black Labrador, right? And so they're jogging past. There's some kind of big, massive dog like that. And they get a few steps past me and all of a sudden that dog like turns around and yanks the guy and comes back to me. This dog just wanted to say hello. which is, I don't know why.
Wait a minute. We were rude.
My gosh, the dog had to come back. So he's like it was my long lost pal. It was like the coolest interaction. So this dog comes over, is like so excited to see me. And the guy is looking at me like, what in the heck? And he's like,
Do you know
man, my dog just likes you for some reason. It's like, maybe I knew him in another life. I don't know. Anyway, we pet the dog and we go on. But I just thought, what a wonderful thing that this dog's joy was just so complete, so thoughtless. It's just like, I got to go say hi to that person. And it just made me smile the rest of the day just because that dog was happy. I got to share in the joy. And that was it. It was just this tiny little interaction for nothing other than two people sharing random joy. And I guess that doesn't really have to do with creativity per se, but we can extrapolate.
But the joy part of it, right? And we had friends over for New Year's Eve, and we haven't seen them in a while. And Ember, our dog, hasn't seen them. I don't even know how long, but she knows them very well. And they came in, and she was just like, "Oh my God, you're like my favoriteest thing ever!" And she was just so excited, and I was just looking at her, and we were just like, her joy is so complete. She doesn't half-ass anything. She's like, I love you so much. You were the best thing ever, ever, ever. And that energy and emotion that she has, I'm like, oh my gosh. And we temper ours a lot by like, is this the right thing we should be doing? Or is this, how are people going to see this? Or, dog doesn't care. It's like, I don't care if you think I'm crazy.
I'm a dog.
You're gonna take this and you're gonna like it.
So, and it's a good thing to remember, right? To just that unbridled ability to be in that moment, to feel what we're feeling, and that's it. And I love that. I want to make sure that is as present in my creative life as any other parts of my life. But just like, I'm just gonna paint paper. And I'm going to cut paper, and now I'm going to make a dish with things in it, and just feel because I feel like doing it, because I'm not going to go, oh, that's dumb. I'm going to be like, nope, I want to, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, I feel like that's you, and maybe it's honestly, like you have done so many different types of artwork. You're not like, well, I'm a polymer artist who makes necklaces because you used to, focal point beads and all that stuff. But that was your thing for a long time. And I don't know the last time you made a necklace. But
decades.
Like,
I don't know how long.
You're like, I'm going to paint this rock. I'm going to do a mosaic on this little piece of tile. I'm going to make a dish with things in it.
Well, I do appreciate you say that because, I just want to follow the joy, and in the creative light too. I don't want to get stuck. Like, well, I'm this kind of artist. I guess I better do that again. I want to just keep playing, and drag people along with me, whether they want to or not.
Yeah. I actually just wrote an article about that for the International Polymer Clay Association. It wasn't really supposed to be about that. It was supposed to be about other media's role in polymer art. And I ended up talking about asking yourself what it's supposed to be. Like, I'm a polymer artist, therefore my work has to always be polymer. Because you identify, most people would say you're a polymer artist, but there are like periods of time where there's nothing but beads and shells and bits and bobs and no polymer on your work, or it's epoxy at most or whatever. And I don't think we should corner ourselves by those labels and not do whatever it is that does bring us joy at that moment.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's all come down from the fact that if you feel like you have to make a living at your art, or you have to sell it, or whatever it is, which many people feel like they have to, even though they don't have to, then there's the common wisdom is that you should do one thing that's identifiable as you, not branch out, So we kind of get stuck in that thing of like, no, I have to do this one thing. It's like, screw that. That was a small bit of advice in a limited circumstance for a few amount of people, but somehow got extrapolated into the whole of your art experience. And I'm just like, man, follow the bliss, baby. Just do what is amusing to you. Play, go for the experience, If you have to do it because you need to make a livelihood at it, then at least try to make it as enjoyable as you can, as experientially satisfying as you can.
You can do what you need to do for the end goal purpose of selling, being in a gallery, getting representation, whatever it is that you need. Because that's really what we're talking about. Like, if you have to narrow down what you're doing and you have to try to stay under that label very specifically because your gallery representation wants you to do that, or the shows that you go to want you to do that. That's fine. But that doesn't mean that you can't do other things outside of it, and then share it with your friends or share it on Instagram or find the markets that do want that. There's always a market. I don't believe there's any kind of artwork that anyone does that there's no market for. Because if you do it and you like it, there's someone else out there that likes that stuff too. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And even if you were the only person in the universe to like your weird, fuzzy spider balloon art or whatever you do, then just do it for you and put it in your room or in your bathroom or whatever and look at it and be amused by it. And that is all good. Yeah.
Right. So it still has a purpose and your market is you.
Exactly so.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, we're both going to work on our little world things, your little dishes, my rock garden, and maybe we can get some photos up at some point with what we end up doing from them. And I know you were going to try to help people get those started by doing like little packages, right?
Yeah. In fact, I was a little under the weather over the holiday. So one of the things I amused myself with is I just went through a lot of my sources and I started sourcing some things to make some little world kits. Now, everybody can do their own. They don't need a kit from me, but a lot of people like those. So I thought, why the heck not? So I've got these assortment of things coming in and I envisioned a theme and I'm going to make a little creature that goes with each one. So like a limited edition thing. And then they can take the little creature and all the stuff and then create their own little world out of the little individual ingredient. So I'll be having that, and that's something I think I'll be ongoing where I'll do one-offs with something special and occasional kits. Because I think that's going to be a fun ongoing thing.
Well, those can be great, like starter kits. If you've been in arts for a while, you probably have a bunch of bits and bobs, but you can go to ChristiFriesen.com. I will put a link in the show notes or the description section of the podcast player that you're listening to find that from her. So if you want to see what she's up to. And then on Instagram and Facebook, I'll post pictures of whatever we end up with, which isn't going to be by the time this podcast comes out, probably. But
they'll just have to subscribe and keep up and see what's going on. And
maybe we can make it an ongoing thing.
Going to definitely do that on some of my Facebook groups is just have a little World's Day where we just get together. We kind of have a live chat and play and talk about it and have some fun. So,
Yeah. I mean, that does kind of give it an end game, end goal. But if it gets you started in it, that's fantastic. And if people want to share it, totally send me pictures of anything like that you do. That would be cool.
That is so much fun.
I'm just falling in love with this idea of doing more temporal work, just to access that child again, to do things that feel kind of like more pure creativity that are unbounded by all the usual things that come into our artwork, and as a form of meditation. And I think, if regular meditation is hard for you, but you can get into just this kind of work that doesn't have all the pressure on it, I think we'd all really benefit from it. Meditation and that focus can help your artwork as well. So if you feel like you have to have a reason to do it,
that's a good reason
help your creativity.
It is presenting that being in the now, being in the moment. So it's like it's a goal, but also it gets you to let go of goals. That's good.
Let go of goals, and and it's just, it's good for our health. It's good for our brain, and it's going to be easier to access your own creativity and to get into flow if you're doing it on a regular basis. Has all kinds of things in it. So we look forward to
I love it.
doing that. So we'll see what happens.
Me too.
We'll post stuff regularly.
I'll keep in touch with you personally and see what's going on, because I will definitely want to hear about what's going with your rock garden.
Yeah, and yours too.
Play area.
And my play. I know. I'm so excited. I don't even know what to put in there yet. I think we're going to end up going to thrift stores and
put the weirdest crap that you can you feel excited about. Do it.
We already have a lot of weird crap.
I know. I can't wait to see how it ends up in there.
We'll see what happens, but looking forward to that. I hope all the rest of you also are going to try something temporal. It doesn't have to be the little dishes or the little worlds. It can be whatever it is. It can be sand castles. It can be marshmallow castles. It can be
chalk on the sidewalk.
Whatever it is. So
whatever happens.
Enjoy that. Try to go out and do more temporal work. See if that does help you get into flow state and feels meditative and helps your creativity. And then, just go out and feed that muse. Be true to your weirdness. And you're the one who brought up that line that I use all the time now.
That's right. Be true to your weirdness, baby. Be true to your weirdness. Absolutely.
And then join us next time on the Sage Arts Podcast.